All right, good evening, everyone. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We're really excited to be here with all of you tonight, kicking off our Pride Month in celebration of a brand new book called The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough on the Myth of LGBTQ plus Solidarity. We're here with the author, Kaila Adia Story, in conversation with Susana Morris, who is our beloved and former longtime board chair of Charis Circle, our nonprofit. Today is National Give Out Day, which is a day of philanthropy for LGBTQ organizations. So we've been focusing on this theme of solidarity, particularly cross-racial solidarity within the LGBTQ movements. So we're really excited to be bringing this conversation into the evening. This event is co-sponsored with ZAMI NOBLA. ZAMI NOBLA is headquartered in Atlanta and is the leading advocacy organization dedicated to empowering Black lesbians over 40, with active chapters in Georgia and North Carolina and a robust national membership. They prioritize advocacy alongside community organizing and community action research. They are committed to forging a strong collective voice and advocating for the rights of Black lesbians in our communities and beyond. And if you have time, you could go back and check out our IG live that Angela Denise Davis and I recorded this morning or this early afternoon, where we talked a lot about the creative work that they're doing, culture work, and the importance of books and culture work for our movements, and how necessary it is for us to be making alternative culture right now. And so that's what we're doing tonight, making alternative culture. So Dr. Susana Morris is a queer daughter of Caribbean immigrants and a scholar of Black feminism and a cultural critic who has dedicated her career to studying the interior lives of Black women. She's an associate professor of literature, media, and communication at Georgia Tech, a former Anschutz Distinguished Fellow at Princeton University, and Norman Freeling Visiting Professor at the University of Michigan. She's the author of Close Kin and Distant Relatives, The Paradox of Respectability in Black Women's Literature, and co-founder of the Crunk Feminist Collective. Her other works include the co-edited collection, The Crunk Feminist Collection, and the co-authored young adult handbook, Feminist AF, The Guide to Crushing Girlhood. Her forthcoming book, Positive Obsession, The Life and Times of Octavia E. Butler, will be coming out on August 19th. We will be celebrating it at Auburn Avenue Research Library. We are so excited. You can pre-order it now from Charis. So get in right now and get that pre-order. Pre-orders really help authors. So we're so glad you're here, Susana, and we're so excited for this book. I just got my pub copy and ready to dig in. And we're here tonight with Kaila. And Dr. Story is an associate professor in the departments of women's, gender, and sexuality studies and Pan-African studies, as well as the Audre Lorde Endowed Chair at the University of Louisville. She is the co-creator, co-producer, and co-host of Louisville's public media's Strange Fruit, Musings on Politics, Pop Culture, and Black Gay Life, a popular award-winning podcast. Her research examines the intersections of race and sexuality, with special attention to Black feminism, Black lesbians, and Black queer identity. In 2017, Dr. Story was named an LGBTQ plus community leader and changemaker by NBC's inaugural #Pride30. In 2021, she was recognized by Michelle Obama's nonprofit organization, Reach Higher, for creating safe spaces for LGBTQ plus students in and out of higher education. Dr. Story was chosen as the 2022 champion of Pride for the state of Kentucky by the Advocate magazine. And we are so excited to be here to celebrate The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough. So welcome to you both. Welcome to everybody watching at home. And we welcome you all to put your questions in the chat at any time, and we'll incorporate those into the conversation. But I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Morris, and we'll get this party started.
Thank you, ER. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here tonight. I loved reading the book. I got my life several times. And I'm interested in what was the impetus for the book? You know, you talk a lot about your own experience, which I love. It's very much like the personal is political all throughout your story is woven. But tell us about how literally the writing of the book came to be.
Yes, no, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank y'all so much for having me. And thank you so much for being in conversation with me. This means so much to me. For me writing the book, I've been, well, okay, so um, I had always felt like the most racial antagonism when I went into LGBTQ spaces and gay clubs, and I had lived in different cities, and I kept having these same kinds of experiences.
Mhm,
Um, Either people wouldn't read me as queer in these spaces, and I'm like, I came out when I was 16, or they would see me as
mhm,
like, oh, I'm there like as an entertainer. I was always just misread in a space that I presumed to be liberal, and that I presumed, I guess,
mhm,
in my own naivete, to be more thoughtful about identity.
mhm.
And so
Yeah.
there was a particular incident in 2008 when me and my friend Jay, who became the co-host of my podcast, we were canvassing for Obama. Or this, so it was right before, yeah. So we were canvassing for Obama. We decided to go to this bar in Louisville, and it's a gay bar, but it's like a dive bar, hole in the wall type place. And
Mhm,
when we get there, we just are playing pool and drinking and chilling out. And so all of a sudden, this man comes in with these two loose dogs, and it scares me because they don't have leashes. And so I hop up on the pool table and I'm like, sir, can you get your dogs? You know, I don't like unleashed dogs in public spaces. And he was like, I don't
mhm,
like the girls on my pool table. And so I was like, oh. So I said, oh, wow, okay. And so then 2 seconds later, the bartender comes to us in my group that I'm with. It's me, Jay, some of my students, and some friends, and tells us that we have to leave. And I'm like,
mhm.
why do we have to go?
Yeah.
The bartender's like, he's the owner of the owner of the bar, and you have to leave. So we're in a gay bar. This is a white gay man, white gay cis man telling me and my mostly queer, trans, non-binary, Black and Latinx group of folk that we have to get out and we have to leave because he brings in his unleashed dogs into the space. So when we get outside, I'm like, let's all just go. And so my student, Lindsay, starts kind of yelling at him, like, you know, this is rude, and you know, all these kinds of things. And um, then Jason says, you know, you're the part of this establishment, but you need to watch how you talk to people. And
Mhm,
so after Lindsay says something and Jay says something, he calls Lindsay the B word, the C word. He calls Jay the N word. So I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, so we got some misogyny. We got some white supremacy. We have rhetorical violence, and this is all in a gay space, and it's being thrown at Black, queer, and trans folk. So I told him, I said, you know, sir, I just moved here to this city, and I don't know who you are, and I'm sure you don't know who I am, but I just got hired at the university, and when you see me next time, I'm going to come back and take your bar from you, not teach you a lesson on anti racism or what it means to live within the intersection of identity or talk to you about gay racism, even, right? So at this point, from being out at 16, from going to gay clubs in Ann Arbor and Detroit and Chicago and Philly and keeping having the same experience all the time with like
mhm,
either overt acts of racism or covert acts of racism. I'm like, what is going on? So we ended up taking the bars, so it's a happy ending. He tried to apologize to me as soon as he found out that I was a professor, but I told
mhm,
him that, you know, you called my one friend the N word and you called my other friend the C and the B word, and I guess I'm all three, aren't I? So you don't welcome me, you don't wish me well, and the only way that I felt like he was going to understand the type of harm that he brought to me and my group was to take that money.
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
clearly this is how he had been operating his business. This was a place
mhm,
that other people who were from Louisville and who were gay had frequented and had gone there, and maybe they hadn't had that experience, or maybe they saw someone else have it, and didn't feel empowered enough to speak up. So it for me, I felt like, it became an impetus for the podcast so we could talk about these harms within our own community. I think we know about the gender and sexual tyranny from the outside, but what about what's happening on the inside, like in the interiority of our community? I'm seeing, you just see it all over the place. Like I see all these lists for, how to celebrate Pride safely. These are the cities that are welcoming. Here's a destination queer friendly. And none of those like email blasts or, take into consideration race and queerness, race and transness. They just don't take that into consideration. So I'm like, if these are the safest cities for folks that are LGBTQ, are all those folks white? So how is LGBTQ identity all of a sudden synonymous with whiteness, at least to mainstream media and seemingly to others? So I was like, so it's been years brewing that kind of made me want to write about this in a more serious way.
I love that story. I mean, as I was reading it, I was like, take the bar. So what is the queer and trans nightlife scene in Louisville now post y'all, wreck shop?
Yeah. And so since that happened, there were just been so many amazing things. There was this these two Black gay men who were husbands ended up organizing a prom that was like this Black queer prom. They said, everybody, but it was really, Black LGBT folks. There's a number of party promoters in our city now who are Black and queer. They also incorporate other members of the community to operate as security for their parties and to keep safety, because many don't feel safe with law enforcement being the mechanism for that. And so let's just hire one another, which is really reflective of, back in the day where we, we as a community didn't do that. And so like Stormy, for instance, would patrol Greenwich Village and keep the girls safe and keep everybody safe because law enforcement wasn't something that we saw as safety. And so it's become, I think, in many ways more robust. There still needs to be more spaces, but I do think that the thing that's been really interesting to me and thrilling about moving here is I was like, girl, I'm about to go to Kentucky. Knowing, and I mean, that's how I felt like, oh my God. And there is a really, really vibrant, thriving Black LGBTQ community there. And like that are activist oriented and civically engaged, and that now, like, I feel like and have really made demands on folks in the city. That's why I was really thrown back. It was unbelievable to me. I had encountered such friendliness and such welcoming energy when I moved there. So I was just like, what? So the first time, because that was already in my head, like I'm going to be racially antagonized moving to the South and but the fact that the first place that happens to me, and actually the only place to this day, was this queer bar.
The irony of it all. Irony of it all. And I think that story also, speaks to that there are many vibrant, robust LGBTQ plus communities in the South, whether not just Atlanta, not just New Orleans, not just the big cities, not just Houston, if we're going to count Texas as the South. I don't know, fight about it in the comments. But in rural areas, in smaller cities, like there's we are everywhere. We're everywhere. We're not just in Atlanta or New York or the Bay Area. So I'm glad to hear that the community thrives and continues to do interesting things. I want to talk about the title, right? So the title, The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough. And obviously you're riffing off of Ntozake Shange's, legendary choreo poem. Could you say more about why you chose this title in particular and sort of the significance of the rainbow? I mean, here we are in Pride Month, happy Pride.
Yeah.
But now you're telling us the rainbow ain't enough. What's the deal?
Yeah. So I love Ntozake Shange. And I tell a story in the book of how, as a little girl, I would escape to my Aunt Nay and Uncle Phil's house from my grandmother's house. She was like, you know, Southern and harsh and in ways that I just, my Ann Arbor, Michigan sensibilities didn't get, you know. I totally would get it now. But as a kid, I didn't. And so I'm like, oh my God, I would call my Aunt Nay and Uncle Phil come get me. And their house was so, one, it was the biggest house I had seen, and it was so beautiful. It had all types of art, African art, Caribbean art, Black American art, busts, statues, you know, and everything was beautiful. But I was real fixated on my Aunt Nay's for Colored Girls poster. So she had the poster board. And I was like, where did you get that? And she was like, I got it. I stood in the rain for it and I waited after the play was over. That's, you know, and she's like telling me all about her journey with it and all this. And I'm like, okay, you know, so then I read Into Zaki Shange years later. And then I'm like, I need that, Aunt Nay. Can you give it to me? And she's like, no. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, and so like, but I'm like, but this is like my research. Like by this point in my life, I'd come into my own feminist politic. I identified as a Black
Mhm.
feminist. I was queer. And I loved it. I love the way that Shange decided to talk about the kind of intra-racial violence that happens to Black girls and women, the kind of terror that visits them at the hands of other Black folk, and
Mhm.
how the rainbow signified the many facets of womanhood, and also their different relationships to violence, economic violence, sexual violence, domestic violence. And it was such an important conversation, and it continues to be. And I felt that the rainbow, which is a huge symbol for the LGBTQ community, it's also the symbol that I saw in a bookstore in a window when I was like, "Girl, I'm gay out here." I'm like stone gay. You know how you get there, you realize like, dang, like I'm gay out here, like I'm gonna be gay out here. So I was like, I gotta do something about this. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna be gay out here and what does that mean. And
Mhm.
so I saw the little rainbow in the bookstore downtown, and that was my window into kind of
Mhm.
what gay identity, you know, my early beginnings of like understanding what gay identity was about too. And so I felt like the two were fitting because the rainbow that Gilbert Baker makes in the 70s is supposed to signify all of our sexualities and gender identities. And yet we are still fractured as a
Mhm.
community in the sense that when AJ Hikes was directing the Philadelphia LGBT Center and put those black and brown stripes in that flag, honey, the white gay children lost their mind.
They did.
They lost their mind, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, so it came from that idea. It came from let's talk about how this rainbow, this symbol of solidarity and the symbol of being a united front against sexual and gender tyranny, that's
Mhm.
really like our LGBTQ communities are not living that. Certainly ones that house folk who are transphobic yet queer, who are you know what I mean? So yes. That's
Yeah.
where it came from.
Yeah, I love the sort of the mix of the metaphors, right? Because we have this like longstanding Black feminist tradition. Obviously, we have this longstanding tradition in the queer community. And then there are ways in which we're thinking about how it can be expansive, and folks don't always want to think about it that way,
Yeah.
right? And going back to what you were talking about before in terms of your experience in the club, where you live, and the fact that this is where you encounter the misogynoir, this is where you encounter the racism, and so you trace a trajectory in the book that I really love, that you are unpacking and excavating all these moments where you would think Black folk would be safe, but actually we're getting this heightened racial antagonism in these supposedly safe spaces. And you link it to neoliberalism, and you link it to homonormativity. So I'm
Mhm.
sure many of us are familiar with heteronormativity, and we're trying to rebuke that. But can you say more about homonormativity, particularly in this moment that we're in?
Oh no, yes, certainly. Homonormativity is everywhere now. So like a very simple takeaway of what homonormativity would be is there was recently an article that AP News did saying that the vice president, J.D. Vance, he actually enjoys normal gays, quote unquote. And child, he likes normal gays. And then I saw,
I was
and
about to say, I bet he does, but you know what? Let me.
yes, but so, and then you have organizations like the Log Cabin Gays, which are these kind of
Right.
conservative gay cis men who promote conservative values and capitalism and these things. So homonormativity is essentially a kind of apolitical identity. There's no investment in one's queerness as a political identity. And in fact, the investment is in one's ability to consume and one's ability to purchase. And it's so neoliberalism meets homonormativity, right? You got cis gay folks primarily trying to present themselves as normal, regular, not like those other kind of queer folk, not like maybe trans folk, but we're like normal gay people. And then meeting that with neoliberalism, which turns everyone into a consumer and everything is about people becoming a commodity, right? So essentially human beings are too. And so when the neoliberal meets the homonormative, it's an explosion. And this political moment right now is very telling when we have folks, we have cis gay folks, cis gay and lesbian folks trying to sever the T from the acronym, talking about because there's so much transphobic backlash that somehow we need to sever the T. And so I'm seeing this on threads and these things, and I'm like, are you kidding me? We literally would not have queer liberation, queer anything without trans folk, period. Right. So I don't, period. So I find it, the fact that folk can think that they can say that or type that, and that's like, yeah, I'm giving it to them. Yep, letting them know. That is very
like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but like, no, actually be quiet, because that's not a take that you should share or even think.
It's not a hot take, but the fact that folks think that it is, they don't recognize their own neoliberal leanings and how heavy they're trying to lean into this idea of homonormativity, and having your queer identity so reflective of straight identity that you can't tell the difference. And it goes back to that. It goes back to, because I feel like every instance has this, right? Like, oh my God, this is such an old example, but do you remember If These Walls Could Talk? Do you remember that series?
I do.
And so the second one about only lesbians. So the other one is about, Roe and Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. The second installation is all lesbians. And the second vignette is my favorite. Nia Long is in it. Chloe Sevigny, my God. Chloe Sevigny plays this like, anyway. So anyway, okay, yes, let me get it. Chloe Sevigny, and so they are lesbian activists on their college campus. They run a women's organization and a feminist organization. And basically the feminists have a meeting and want to kick the lesbian feminists out because the university has responded and said, you're a lesbian group. Mm-hmm. And so the straight women in the feminist group that was created with straight women and lesbians, right? They created this group together.
Right. Collaboration.
Yes, it was collaborative. They decide like, no, the outside world in this case, the campus or the university is seeing some members of the group as too radical, too left, too different. Mm-hmm. And that group is saying, yeah, let's just, and so they specifically say, we can't afford to talk about your issues now. And it's the same thing with feminism, right? This idea that when I was an undergrad, and I would be like, well, what about race? And they were like, we're talking about all women, not just specific.
Not being divisive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like, okay. So somehow y'all know about feminism, right? And it has nothing to do with race. It's seen as how feminism is literally created by Black women. So this was something that, for all of my identities that I hold, there were these things that there were behavior from folk who identified as feminists but were anti-trans, or identified as queer progressives but didn't see their own racism or their own racialized fetishes for people of different right? Or folks committed to Black liberation, but felt like, yeah, homophobia is what's up, and transphobia too. So for me, it was just like all of these things are like wildly and deeply problematic. And so I just wanted a way to like talk about that and really juxtapose it to what's going on in this, like, political moment.
Yeah. I wonder what you think. I have a couple of questions, but a follow-up to that is, what do you think the role of the legalization of gay marriage plays in this rise in homonormativity? And
Oh,
I'm not anti-gay marriage. I'm a good gay. I'm just
I
saying.
know, I know, I know. I feel like that is what happened, and I really talk about this in the Pride chapter of the book. So the Pride chapter is
Mhm.
called "Our First Pride Was a Riot," and it's one of my favorite chapters in it because I start talking about the biggest threats to the LGBTQ community currently, which are legislation and law enforcement. And if we think about the summer of 1969 and
Mhm.
Stonewall, the biggest threats to LGBTQ communities were what? Legislation, law enforcement. So
Mhm.
it's literally the same things that plagued our community then are plaguing our community now. And so I wanted to, in the Pride chapter, what ends up happening is before Stonewall, you have a number of different resisting like incidents, right, where folks, the Compton Cafe riots, the Black Cat Tavern riots, I talk about all of these, sit-ins, and these resistance movements that were primarily formed with Black trans women, Latinx trans women, and Black lesbians and Black gay men, right? They're the main organizers of these events, and how that precedes Stonewall. And then how Stonewall, right, which is this mass movement of 3 days against the harmful ways of law enforcement and New York police, and also responding to the cross-dressing, the anti-cross-dressing ordinances that were going on at the time, the police raids, the dehumanization from the police, all of these kinds of things. And so I wanted to talk about those beginnings because those beginnings, those initial organizing efforts there was so much cross pollination. You had LGBT folks who were working with feminist groups, who were working with Black groups, and they were literally collaborating together. You had Sylvia, right, Marshall's homegirl, who's like working with the Young Lords, and the Young Lords are working with the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So the strategies that they employ, right? If we think about Dewey's Cafe, where they stage a sit-in in Philadelphia because the owner decided gay folks can't eat here, trans folks can't eat here all of a sudden. And so they did this day of resistance there where they had an eat-in. And so that kind of social justice strategy is clear borrowed from civil rights strategies. And so we, at one point in time, were doing things collaboratively in this way. And the more and more queer and trans identity becomes institutionalized, known about, and seen as conventional, the more we get away from that early type of organizing we're doing. And those things get siloed in it. And so before Stonewall, you had about 50 gay and lesbian organizations. After Stonewall, you have over 800. Like 4 years after Stonewall, you have over 800 nonprofits. And what happens when those nonprofits erect themselves? Human Rights Campaign, the Gay and Lesbian Task Force, just the main GLAAD. What happens is then for the next 50 years, every single executive director is a white and cis gay person. There are no trans executive directors, no non-binary executive directors, no Black ones, right? I remember the big announcement, I think it was in 2022, when HRC finally got a Black executive director after all this time. And so it's just, so once we get these LLCs, these nonprofits, we get further and further away from what brought us through and took us to Stonewall. And then what ends up happening from there, these executive directors are in there. There's almost no Black LGBT folk or Latinx LGBT folk on any board or has any power in these organizations. So they begin to set the trend for what the national conversation of queer freedom is. And for them, it's access to military and it's marriage. So two of the most harmful institutions historically for so many minoritized communities, and yet this becomes the focus, the main vein of our politics. Like no more what Star was talking about, what Marsha and Sylvia were talking about. No more trying to legalize sex work, unionize sex workers. No more dealing with LGBT houseless youth. No more dealing with HIV/AIDS intervention at a community level. Let's talk about how we can get married, and then we get married, we can buy things, and then we can buy more things, and then we can just
consolidate our wealth. Yeah,
we just think about us being gay because now we have buying power, and does it really matter when you're rich? So that's, I mean, it's like this is really so that's how we get from this kind of really radical notion of queer liberation, and slowly but surely the most vulnerable folks in our community are kind of chipped out and taken away, from our community, right? Because folks are thinking it's more politically feasible to have freedom if we erase legacy and erase certain folk.
Yeah, who they didn't want to have included in the first place. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, this conversation specifically about Stonewall makes me think of how you referenced the 2015 film Stonewall, and how I remember when the trailer came out and there was like a white boy with a brick, and I thought, what's happening here?
What is going on?
This is not
I'm saying, this is what I'm saying, Susanna. Like it's so maddening when that film came out. And they completely invented this kind of Stonewall narrative. This white, gay, cis boy from the Midwest goes to New York City, right? And they make it seem like he's going to New York City to slum it, right? Like he's slumming it up. He's leaving his pure, pure Americanness behind. And then he is the one who throws the brick to ignite the 3 days of rioting. I mean, it's almost as if this was intentional. To me, so that's what I'm basically saying, is that there has been this deep investment, primarily from white cis gay men, but also a lot of white cis lesbians as well, to put themselves in positions of power and to shape what the narrative should be around queer liberation. And often that narrative doesn't include trans folk. It don't include Black folk, Asians, Latinx, Indigenous, disabled. Like it don't include nobody. So, and that's how we get to this idea of all we care about as a community are pride parties, same-sex marriage, buying power. And that's what I felt like the perception was. And that's why I was always misread as not being queer. Because people were thinking that queerness was white and rich and all of these other things, and I ain't. And so I'm like, oh, wow.
Right. That's why I have my femme earrings on today. My femme earrings to represent as someone who is frequently not understood to be queer. We got to show up and do the things, and not just because of my femness, but because of my race. You know what I mean? And so. Right. So when we're talking about reclaiming narratives and just for folks to for profit create a whole narrative, a mainstream film. When I heard the film was coming out, I thought, okay, of course it's some pure BS. Of course it's pure BS. And you really do an excellent job of like outlining all the various, really contemporary examples of media representation and how they often fall short, going back to the L word and other things like that, where you think, okay, well, there are a couple Black characters. Oh, we're not going to explore Blackness at all. And you highlight a thing that I really hate to see in general around Black characters, but it's so particularly insidious around queer and trans Black characters. They don't have any people. They just exist in a vacuum. They just pop up one day. They don't have anybody. They're completely orphaned. There's no chosen family.
No.
It's just like they're Cabbage Patch Kids. They just
pop up.
Workers drop them off. They just pop up. It's unclear. And that is a thing that happens to Black characters in general. But I think it's particularly problematic. So could you talk about that as well? Sort of on the one hand, there's more of us, but who's the us and how are we contextualized?
Yes. I mean, and I love the Cabbage Patch Kids. Oh my God, I want to go and find my Cabbage Patch. I feel like she's in the basement. I loved Cabbage Patch Dolls when I was little. I love that reference. But no, like, yes, like, for me, I've always been a media consumer. I'm like, ever since I was a kid, I love television, film. I like, all my TikTok is just doing voiceovers for movies. I'm obsessed. So, I was into movies. And so a part of me kind of exploring my own queerness was not only reading, but also looking for movies that represented queerness and Black lesbian identity in particular. So I would take my mom's Blockbuster card, and I was like renting all these gay movies, on it, because I wanted to know. And every movie I rented, there was never a Black woman with another Black woman. She was a Black lesbian with a white woman every single time, from Bar Girls to Go Fish to Incredibly True Adventures of Two Girls in Love. What was my other fave? And then Watermelon Woman. And even
Watermelon Woman.
Yeah, and even though Watermelon Woman is trying to interrogate the very thing that I'm seeing, because I was so young and viewing it, it ended up falling into that same pattern. And then when I get older, the L Word comes out, and I'm curious about that. And then I watch that, and they do the same thing in the L Word, right? The thing I have, and my small caveat is, I really enjoyed the L Word reboot. I felt like its reboot is like light years away from its first iteration. But that first iteration of it, Eileen Chachkin, the creator, said, like, this is about me and my friends in LA. So this is what it was. And I'm like, okay, well, but it fit into a pattern that I saw and a genealogy that I saw, where the Black lesbian characters were always with white women. And again, I have absolutely no issue with interracial unions or relationships. Go in, let have, this wonderful. But for me, as this young Black lesbian who was attracted to Black girls and then eventually Black women, I wanted to see like how other Black women characters navigated dating Black women. And there was never a Black woman, ever. And so I was always waiting, right? And so you have Tasha and Alice in the L Word. I feel like you have Jennifer Beals' character, right? But that's why they made it such I feel like one of the best was their first episode when Bet and Tina are trying to have that baby, and Tina freaks out because the donor comes to the door and he's a Black man. And Tina's like so upset about it, but she's been dating Bet, who's a Black woman, for 8 years. So, and I feel like they were trying to do some like education stuff around that, but that was like, girl, that's your wife. Anyway,
that's who you chose,
girl. And so there was never even, and it wasn't just that this was the only example, but there was never conversations about race in these episodes. There was never an interrogation. They were never even saying that. There was just no conversation about it. And I felt like this didn't make any sense. And then as time went on, Orange is the New Black. All the Black girls in prison are straight, except for Poussey. So Poussey has to wait for the Asian girlfriend. I mean, that's fine. At least they gave her a woman of color this time. I'm just saying that this is jail. We're talking about prison, which are usually kind of racially polarized and segregated. But so it was like over and over again. And in the meantime, we had folk like Ian Patrick Polk. He had done The Skinny. He had done Noah's Ark. So there was a lot of Black gay male visibility out there. And then we had Moonlight by Terrell Evan McCraney. We got Blackbird by Ian Patrick Polk. So there was a lot. There wasn't enough, but there was certainly more examples of Black gay men being in community and relationship and intimate with one another, and there just wasn't. And so now, thankfully, we have like folks like Lena Waithe, but it's literally the Black queer creatives themselves who end up creating the content. So when it's absent, it's because they're not in the driver's seat. And when it appears, it's because they are. And so Waithe, with Master of None season 5, that was all about her and this Black woman in the relationship. The Thanksgiving episode with Angela Bassett. The 20s, where she has this
love 20s.
Oh my God, right? Black mask protagonist,
Yes.
center of the show.
Mask on mask love.
That conversation.
Very hot. Mm.
They had that conversation in the cafe about mask for
Yes.
mask. I couldn't take it. That's when I've been like dying for content
Yes.
like this, and now I'm 45, and I guess we got some content now, right? But it was just something where there was almost like a complete absence, and I just didn't get that. And even still, we just had Black Mirror come out. It was just the new Black Mirror, and I was so excited about it because Issa Rae was going to be gay, and same thing, right? So I don't know what they're trying to do with that. I don't know why they do that. Just with Black lesbians, they do that. I don't know why they do that. And
I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm interested though. I have a theory. I'm not sure. It's something about making Black queer women less scary. I think pairing us with white women, this is off the dome, people. So, but I almost the way that it happens with like, for many years in mainstream movies with like cishet Black men. You know, I remember Will Smith saying like, oh, there were so many reasons why he usually didn't have a Black woman star, you know, heroine across from him or what have you, because folks would say, oh, it's a Black movie. Now it's about race. Meanwhile, he's saving the world or something. And of course, there were exceptions in his career, but I feel like there's a version of that. I don't think that's the only reason, but I think it's a reason. Particularly if you're going to have masculine Black women. Then
they really ain't gonna
show whether or not we identify as mask or not. So yeah, I want to work that out, but I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's certainly that. I think that it's the way that Black womanhood is seen and viewed through both like the racial and gendered lens, and why to movie execs and creatives that somehow is a non-fit in that case. So I see it as their way to soften that Black lesbian character, that way to not make it a Black film. And I also think that there's an investment, though. There's some kind of underlying investment that Black lesbian characters must find queerness through whiteness. That's what it seems like to me. I mean, outside of, like I said, Lena Waithe, and then of course Derez Pariah, excellent. That's not even that many years old. So yeah, you just don't. It's that, you know, that I was just a Black girl chilling, and then I met this white girl, and she like hit me to lesbianism. You know what I mean? It just it seems so like, I don't know that. I mean, I don't know why they do it. It was just something that for me, because I had encountered so much racial antagonism, not just from cis gay men in nightclubs, but also from white lesbians. So I just like how everybody races in the club, but then go together all the time. Okay. Anyway,
how does that work? Make it make sense.
Like, I mean, I had white lesbians come to me like, you know, I have a biracial daughter. Do you know how I can do her hair? It's like, girl, am I a hairdresser? Am I at the nightclub?
I'm at the bar. Are you going to buy me a drink or what?
Okay. And don't you have YouTube? So, I mean, so I don't see how, we're like gonna move and groove and with the racial antagonism afoot. So I was just like, I thought it was so odd and strange. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. I was like, am I the only one who's seeing this? Like, why is this always happening?
No, you're not the only one. Although, also folks can be racist and then want to fetishize. That's what you also talk about in the book, right? So that is, I think, how some people reconcile it, right? The Black person in my bed is a Black person I know, versus all these other Black people. And I wonder if we're really talking about US American experience, because I see you have a Rafiki poster behind you. The film Rafiki. I hope if folks haven't seen it, go watch Rafiki. It's a beautiful story set in Kenya. Yes, Kenya. So
I was like,
love it.
Let me see. Yeah, but no, it is. It's so wonderful, and that's exactly why I got it. See, I'm like, here you go.
Yeah, inspiring all the work.
Yeah.
I know we have some questions in the chat or comments in the chat. But before we do that, I just want to hear if you what you would say you want the life of this book to be, what you hope it will accomplish.
I hope that folks will, one, read it, and then I hope that they will think more about the ways that they can enact harm to other folks in the community who have other identities in our community. And also for folks who know those things, right, already, for them to just get more of a holistic picture of our beginnings as LGBTQ freedom fighters and queer liberation, and then to see what our current threats are. So all those things. So it's really like a book for everybody. I've been seeing some um, reviews and folks have been saying like on Goodreads, and they're like, if you are a white, gay, cis person, But I also feel like Black LGBT people, Latinx, Asian, everybody can get something out of it, because we all are kind of walking around here without robust knowledge about these things, about our beginnings, and the media like Stonewall that's produced and all of these other kind of news outlets get our community and our beginnings wrong. And so just to get a sense of our history and how we can move forward, because if our community continues to be fractured in this way, we continue to experience racism in LGBTQ communities, misogyny, transphobia, how are we going to fight this foe? How are we going to fight this continued, right, threat against our community if we don't have true solidarity with one another? Because that can't really happen with bias or bigotry. And right now, we got a lot of bias and bigotry happening. So let's learn about it, do something about it.
I'm muted. Absolutely. And some folks in the chat, I'm inviting folks to put questions in the chat. There's been lots of lovely comments. One commenter talks about how the women of Brewster Place, which you write about in the book,
Yes,
was one of the few instances, right?
yes,
That had
and Alice
and
Walker.
should right.
Avery.
Exactly. Oh, that was an awakening for me. I was like, wait a minute.
Yes, but again, like we were saying, who did that? Who made that happen? Alice Walker and Gloria
Right.
Naylor, right? So when we're in the
Right.
seat, right? So like the two, oh my God, I just did that line the other day in the house. I seen you. Forgot to close your shades, okay? Don't get me
She was
started.
so nosy. Stop being a hater.
She was such a meddler.
Get you somebody. Yeah.
No, she was a meddler, but that was, yes, those were all very foundational, yes.
Yes. And the fact that we also have these newer things coming out. I have not seen the latest season of Survival of the Thickest, so don't spoil it for me. But there is, Black queerness happening also in Harlem with Fine, Jerry Johnson, fine as in
Look,
frog hair,
look,
no reason to be
Susana,
that fine.
Jerry Johnson is in Survival of the Thickest.
That's right. I saw in the preview.
Right, with my fave too. Oh my God, what is her name? That actress, I love her. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. I
Um,
want to say Tasha, but that's not
I
that's not
know
her
that's
name.
not her name. Is it Angela? It's not Angela.
Is
That's
it
like
Tasha?
characters.
Smith, Tasha Smith. It is Tasha. I was thinking Angela, but
Tasha
that's from
Smith.
Tyler Perry.
Oh my God,
Mhm.
there's yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you
you.
for that example. Yes, that is true. That we're
Yes.
starting to
Yes.
see it. We are.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions that folks have? I mean, I can ask other things. Um, but any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes. Before I invite ER back, I want you to tell us about everywhere we can find you and maybe other events that you're doing. So like your social media, your website, the podcast. Tell us all about where we can find you.
Yes, yes. So I'm on Threads and I have the same name on social media everywhere. So my name on Facebook is Kaila Adia Story. And then on Threads it's Doctress Story. So I'm gonna like write it in here because it has these
Mhm.
weird like three S's in it. So it's Dr. Story and it's everywhere. And so that's Threads, Instagram, and I feel like, is that my name on? I feel like TikTok, but TikTok is like mostly my silliness. Like it's me doing voiceovers. Like
We
I did
need that too, though.
I know,
Mhm.
it's my joy. I say in the book at the end where, I told my dad I wanted to be an actress, and he's like, that's all well and good, Munch, but you simply ain't gonna make no money doing that due to racism. You know, and I'm like, okay. So it's my way to like kind of get out my Jones of those kinds of things. But this is my TikTok, and yeah, and it's the same on Instagram. And I'm doing I will be doing an IG live conversation about the book on Instagram this Tuesday coming up. And if you follow Yaba Blay, we'll be in conversation
Mhm.
7 for IG live. And I'm doing another virtual talk next week, next Thursday, with Francesca Royster at DePaul University about the book with Women and Children First. And then I'm doing some like 2 more in-person events. But you can find the book, this book, you can find it everywhere books are sold. On Beacon's website. My website is this right here. And yeah, that's my website. I'm putting in the chat as well.
Yes.
And
Check her out.
I post like pictures from the in-person events there and videos and stuff like that. So I appreciate y'all so much for joining us. Thank you so much for talking about this book and talking to me.
Yes. This was so much fun. So much fun. ER, come on back and do your thing.
All right. Well, I'm gonna come back. Here we go. Slowly but surely. Thank you both so much. That was a beautiful conversation. I'm so glad for everybody being in the chat, being active. I just dropped a link for pre-ordering Susanna's book. So go ahead and do that while you're here. And if you click the teal button at the bottom center of your screen, you can buy The Rainbow Ain't Never Been Enough from Charis. It really does help us when you buy event books from us. So thank you for that. We'd love for you to do that tonight. And if you just are feeling very generous, you can also support our Give Out Day fund. We have until midnight tonight to try and lap some folks and win some money. So feel free to do that. Our next power hour is between 10 p.m. and 10:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you want your money to go even further, you can do it then. So appreciate y'all supporting our queer nonprofit. And once again, just thank you both so much. I really am grateful for the work that you're doing, Dr. Story. I think it's so important. And we need people to come in clear-eyed so that our movements are effective. So I think this book is a great tool for that. So thank you so much. I hope that you both stay safe and well, and we'll see you next time.